Volka, a legendary fighter for the Nightmare faction, someone you can gain in-game for free by completing the storyline mission, and if you wish to upgrade her awakenings you can get them from Tide, with a Volka Soulstone available at wave 105 as well as 125 if you were somehow able to beat that. Volka functions primarily as a supporting fighter. She is fairly tanky, she offers self-sustain and she does do some decent damage, but she also applies some very useful and damaging debuffs. So we'll start with her skills, we'll talk about her awakening, we'll discuss where you want the skill ups to land, and then we'll go into her stats and gearing and gear sets. After that we'll talk about which artifact to give her, and then we'll talk about what content you can use her in. So let's get started by looking at her skills. First off, she has a talent. After each basic attack there is a 30% chance of gaining 1 stack of Scarlet Ferment, gain 1 extra stack when killing an enemy. Scarlet Ferment lasts 20 seconds, and it increases attack and defense by 3%, up to 5 stacks, up to 15% increase. Her basic attack hits up to 3 enemies in range, so she's multi-attacking, which is very nice. Her ultimate Blood Source starts with a rage cap of 1000. You start with 400 rage. It marks 1 enemy within range with the highest max HP, inflicts physical vulnerability and magic vulnerability. This increases the physical and magical damage the target receives by 10% up to 20% with 1 skill up, and lasts for 10 seconds up to 15 seconds with the 2nd skill up. If the enemy dies while the mark is active, Volka immediately recovers 30% HP and gains 2 stacks of her Scarlet Ferment, so effectively giving her 6% attack and defense. Volka also has the auto effect Midnight Requiem. When Scarlet Ferment reaches 5 stacks, she then consumes 2 stacks and attacks up to 10 surrounding enemies, dealing 260% AoE damage and inflicting damage reduction for 3 to 5 seconds. Damage reduction reduces the damage that the enemies deal, and her passive Scarlet Feast, each basic attack of the hero restores her HP by 4%, and each ally also restores their own HP by 1% when Volka is down. This will increase from 4% up to 7% as you see on the self-heal, and 1 to 2% for allies. So a very good way of sustaining herself and also providing her allies with some sustain. So let's have a look at her awakenings. The first awakening, which is quite easy to attain, 105 in Tide, reduces the revival time of all heroes by 25%. You only need to have Volka in the party for this to take effect, you don't need to place her. Very useful in Gear Raid 2 in the later stages that are coming out now. Second awakening grants her some attack. Third awakening affects both of her Scarlet Feast, which is her self-sustain, and Blood Source, which is her ultimate. The recovery amount of Scarlet Feast is doubled during Blood Source. So this means that while her ultimate is activated, allies and herself are healing significantly more, so up to 14% on herself and up to 4% on allies each swing, which is quite a lot of regen. Her fourth awakening reduces total damage by 8%, which is quite a high amount, and her fifth deals 30% additional damage to enemies inflicted with debuffs. 30% additional damage is quite high, and she is applying debuffs with her ultimate, which is the main window where you're going to want to nuke enemies. That's very potent as well. Overall, her awakenings are quite good. We're going to hopefully be getting them from Tide as they add more levels to Tide, and hopefully as they become easier to achieve. The first one is nice, the third one is decent, really the fifth one is the strongest, but that's going to be a very long way away if we can even get them all from Tide, so we'll see how that goes. Back to her skills in terms of what you're skilling up. Her ultimate really only needs 2 skill ups in my opinion, because you want her to increase the damage that marks take, so the first one is very nice, and you want to increase the duration of the mark. As for the rest of it, the self-sustain is nice, and increasing sustain on allies is also nice, but for Midnight Requiem, this is quite good. The weakening effect is beneficial, increase the duration from 3 to 4 seconds or 5 seconds even later on, but I don't think it's too necessary. So in my opinion, you really only want the first 2 levels in her ultimate, and then I would leave her skill ups there. But they are of quite value to get, especially if you use Volka a lot. So, on to gearing and stats for Volka. Amongst her peers and the Nightmare Fighters, she has fairly low base HP, kind of low attack, and quite high defense as base stats go. Again, Volka is not really a damage dealer primarily. She is there mainly for her ultimate, and she is there to provide some additional self-sustain for allies. Saying that, she can deal reasonable damage, and I do use her for that purpose in a few different areas of content. So I do build her for damage. At the moment I've given her a broken set as I'm unable to feel better, but for stats I have focused on attack percent, and crit damage, and I have aimed to get 100% crit rate through subs, which is now my suggestion if you can manage this. Aim for 100% crit rate via sub stats, and aim to have attack, and crit damage as your main stats on your accessories. And for sub stats, of course, you're going to want crit damage, attack, and crit chance if it's an attack main. If it's a crit damage main, you want crit chance and attack as the subs. Additionally to that, picking up attack speed will be quite nice to help her build up her Scarlet Ferment, but it isn't that necessary. It's not a huge deal. And rage recovery would be quite nice to help her have higher uptime on her ultimate, which does have quite a high rage cap at 1000. And this mirrors on the left side. You want crit chance and attack and crit damage if you can. As for what gear sets to use, I have given her the Elite Marksman set. This was mainly just to increase her self-sustain, attacking more often to heal herself. I don't use her mainly as a damage dealer, and it also helps her get her Scarlet Ferment stats up. However, I think Elite Marksman, Elite Fighter, or Elite Mage are all viable options. You just want to make sure you have a balance of your attack bonus and your crit damage bonus. I think picking up some attack speed is worth it. Perhaps not this much. 50 to 100 is probably fine. As for the right side, I would recommend Fracture and Night Terror are very good sets if you wish to deal bonus damage. You could also consider something like Mana Spring. Her rage regen auto is only 12, so pushing it up by an additional 3 is quite a sizable increase. Her ultimate is really what she is there for in a lot of content, but again, it doesn't matter too much. She's not really there to deal loads of damage, so I think whatever gear set you put on her isn't too important. I took a broken set because I would rather put my best sets on my other DPS, and it's enough for her to deal decent damage. So personally, I think it doesn't matter too much, but if you can afford to give her a set and maintain good stats, then I would aim for Fracture or Night Terror. In regard to what artifact to give Volka, I would generally recommend Watcher's Ambition or going for a myth item such as Ragnarok or maybe Scarlet Hunt just for stats. I think the stats win out quite a lot with artifacts just because of the difference between how much you get. I mean, this is a level 25 artifact of legendary versus a myth one at level 10, and you can see the myth one is winning by quite a lot. So I would recommend Watcher's Ambition if you can, and if not, then just go for whichever one gives you the most stats. So with that out of the way, where can you use Volka? Primarily for me, where I'm at in the game and with the pools I have, I actually get a lot of use using Volka in Guild Boss. So I will show you my team lineup. I take Volka and a Nightmare team. This helps me get the Nightmare faction buff using Wrath as the Lord. Placing a 5th Nightmare faction increases attack speed from 20 to 35%. So using Volka as my 5th grants me an extra 15% attack speed bonus for all of the others. So she's quite good just to help flesh out a full team of Nightmare fighters. Additionally, as you can see here, I have Anvita on the left healing everyone, but I have Volka and Wrath on the right side without any healers on them. And you can see Volka is quite comfortably keeping her health up very fast, and she's not struggling to stay alive. And this works even in Nightmare 4 for me. She's able to self-sustain, and you can see she's maintaining near 100% health throughout. Another thing that makes her fantastic for this is she's providing self-sustain for the other people, so she's making the rest of my team more survivable, which helps Anvita as she is a single healer in mine. And additionally, her ultimate blood source grants the physical and magical vulnerability effects for 15 seconds. So that's helping me nuke damage out during the shield phases, or just to get more damage out in general. You can see the debuffs up there. So Volka is very good for Guild Boss because she helps keep people alive, she can sit out of the healer's range, and she can apply very, very useful debuffs which help you deal with the boss. On top of her benefits providing survivability, being able to sustain herself, and offering very potent debuffs, Volka can also do a reasonable amount of damage. Nothing crazy, but as you can see, she's punching near 10 million for me on Nightmare 3, which is obviously outshined by all of the other DPS. Bear in mind the top 3 are within Anvita's attack up buff, and she is still being beaten by Wrath. But my Volka is in broken gear and does not have the best items that I have, so I think she's doing pretty good all things considered. So it's nice that she can provide debuffs, she can sustain herself, help her allies sustain, and also do reasonable damage on top. So I definitely recommend using Volka for Guild Boss if you don't have Infernal teams, etc. ready to go. Other areas where you may use Volka, she can be quite good in the campaign. However, by the time you complete the storyline questline to unlock Volka, you'll have completed most of the campaign already. She costs 20 cost to deploy, which is quite high. So she has limited use throughout a lot of the campaign just because of how high her cost is, and she doesn't do that much damage. She'll be very useful in Promotion Raid. She is not especially useful in Resource Raid, though she does hit 3 enemies at a time, so she is not too bad. She is great in Guild Boss, as we just discussed. In Artifact Fragment Raid, I find her incredibly useful, just being another person to deal with ads. I have a video on that you can check out, but mainly you can place her on the side to tank the enemies if you need to. if you're not running the strategy where you stack everyone around the boss and you catch the boss halfway so that you can have 4 or 5 people wailing on him. If you're not able to run that strategy, then having Volka deal with the slimes on the sides is very good because she self-sustains and has enough damage and hits multiple at the same time. So she's fantastic in Artifact Material Raid. As for the faction trial, she is fairly good in the basic trial but not incredible, and of course she'll be great in the Trial of Nightmare. In Tide, she is quite useful as she provides regen to everyone, so it's a huge amount of people to gain a bonus from. But she's not amazing beyond that. She hits 3 enemies at a time, which is good as you tend to get swarmed. But Tide as a whole is very difficult to give much advice on. It seems to just be a BP mash. And then moving on to the gear raids, she is not particularly useful in gear raid 1. She doesn't really do enough AoE damage for that. And you already are going to be placing expensive mages, so someone who costs 20 is not ideal. In gear raid 3, she does not have any form of aerial damage. I guess she would technically allow allies to gain health back when they attack, but I don't think that's worth placing a 20 cost hero down for. And in Gear Raid 2, she actually can be fairly useful, though it is worth remembering if you use the Nightmare faction lords, such as Wrath or Torador, you are reducing the healing that other Nightmare faction members receive, which can be kind of dangerous in Gear Raid 2 when there is a lot of damage coming out that you need to survive. I do use her mainly for her Awakening 1 in Stage 19, as it is nice to reduce the respawn time on allies, and she can also block and do a bit of damage, but nothing special. So really, Volka is quite good generally. Her main places to shine, I would say, are some of the basic raid content, the Artifact Material Raid, the Guild Boss, a bit of Gear Raid 2, and maybe some areas in the campaign. But primarily, I would recommend using her in the Artifact Material Raid and Guild Boss, and then you can kind of see where she fits. But in general, she's a solid hero. She just isn't at the absolute top, but she is, broadly speaking, a good hero to have, and is well worth investing in if you do not have a significantly better roster. I think that pretty much covers my thoughts on Volka, as well as how I would suggest building her. I do think she is definitely a strong hero. Again, she just doesn't outshine other fighters such as Arrogance, Salazar, or Abomination. That's it for today. Thank you very much. Take care, and bye-bye.